Oh, yeah. Got it.
Great. Hello, Night
Excellent.
Tash.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your willingness. So
Thank
we
you.
met in Tasmania at Dream Farm. Yes,
Hmm.
and we're thrown into a space where we were hanging out for a month and being around each other's creative processes, and it was wonderful, wasn't it, to just be amongst each other and kind of learn by osmosis.
It was like kind of like a little bit of a pressure cooker, where all the flavors kind of infuse.
Yeah.
I think is maybe the analogy. It was definitely like um a lot of highs and lows as well in that space too, which I
Mm,
didn't expect.
mm,
But
yeah.
yeah, looking back on it now, I'm just like, wow, what an amazing opportunity that was.
Mm,
And I was just saying to Em this morning, actually, I was like, and now we have Alice in our lives. This is so great.
mm. Yeah, totally. You never know who you're going to meet along the journey of creativity.
Mm.
Yeah, and so obviously you and Em are very close friends and working together on this project, The Runaway Bells. And you also
Mhm.
have your solo project and another project as well.
And another project as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I feel like as a songwriter, I have lots of different facets to what I do. If I just genuinely let myself completely freely, sit down and have no expectations of what's going to come out. Each time I write a song, it can be so vastly different from the other. Like it could be a really, straight up country pop song with a super cheesy melody. Like that's like probably like the closest to my heart kind of place of my writing. But then I also have because I'm not musically trained at all, I have some pretty experimental, um, kind of unconventional forms and sort of melodic ideas that come out. And so it's really nice to have a few different projects to kind of filter the songs into. So if
Mm,
it's a country pop song, then it's like, clearly this is a Runaway Bells song, and I just have to convince M that it's not too cheesy. And then for my kind of like really heartfelt, emotional kind of ballads, that really kind of lends itself to Parker, which is my solo project. And then for the super weird stuff, I recently started working with a guy named Adam Ouston, and we we got funded for a to make an album over COVID, as like a Tasmanian artist collaborating kind of thing. And we made a record, and then we were like, damn, now we have to start a band. So all of my weird songs have been going into that project,
mm,
which is great.
mm,
To finally have an outlet for some things that I wrote so many years ago, and I
mhm,
just sent to him, and I was like, "What about this?" And he's like, "It's perfect."
mm.
So yeah.
Beautiful. And so when people ask you, what do you do? What do you tell them?
Mm. I tell them that I'm a full time artist and musician,
Mm,
and predominantly a singer and songwriter.
mhm,
And I dabble in production. I'm teaching myself how to produce my own music at the moment.
mhm.
Um, and that it's better than having a crack habit.
You tell them
That's,
that, yeah.
yeah. I'm like, it's a pretty expensive hobby, but I figure that it's better than spending it on drugs. So,
Mm,
you know,
mm.
yeah.
So obviously you're very clear about this now, this decision to be a full-time artist. And
Mm.
I'm curious across your journey, what were the moments of kind of deciding and knowing, and what were the challenges around making that decision and choosing this life path?
Oh, it's so interesting. I feel like I've gone through many cycles of deciding and undeciding. And I would say that like the first moment I decided that I was definitely going to be a musician and a singer was when I was 5 years old,
Mm,
and I listened to Mariah Carey,
mm,
and I was just like, that's who I want to be when I grow up.
mm.
I've since learned that that's not that cool to say in public, but you know, she's amazing. And then I pretty much I remember in high school, I shied away from joining like studying music because I couldn't read. I picked up music really easily with my ears, and I really struggled to read music. And so consequently, when I went away to boarding school, I wasn't really eligible to study music because all the other students were just so much more advanced than me. So I kind of gave it up for a while, and then a friend at the boarding house had a guitar, and I borrowed it, and I used to sneak into the laundry room in the boarding house at night while all the dryers were on, and I would practice. And I just started writing songs. And when I finished school, I was like, I'm going to be a musician. This is what I want to do. So I really pursued that hardcore for probably nearly 10 years, actually. And then I released an album, and I got to a certain stage with everything, and I got so burnt out from being a self-managed artist, and I didn't have anything left in me. But the record really was great, but everyone was just like, what's next? And I was like, what do you mean what's next? Like, that took me 7 years to make. And I felt really exhausted and really kind of strung out. And so I kind of had a bit of a crisis point then, where I was like, who am I if I'm not a musician and an artist? Like, I don't know who I am. Maybe I should be an architect. And so I decided I was going to study architecture. And in order to get into architecture, I needed a portfolio. So I did 2 years of a TAFE degree in visual arts to develop a portfolio. And then it turns out I was actually pretty good being an artist, surprisingly. Not surprisingly. And so I ended up not studying architecture, but going and doing a fine arts degree. And that was kind of to basically just avoid doing music, because I just was so burnt out from being the independent artist that I'd been for all those years. And then I went through like a pretty epic breakup after the first year of my degree. And when that happened, the true kind of creative medium that I think channels out of me the most naturally was songwriting. And it cracked me open, and all these songs fell out. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm a songwriter. That's actually like what I am. So then I think at that point I was just like, music is the love of my life. It's the thing music and visual arts together, like, you know, just accepting that I was an artist was a big thing, to just be like, actually, I'm really good at this. I'm terrible at everything else in life. Like, I got fired from working in a cafe because I talked too much. Could you have guessed? No. And so I think it was at that point that I was just like, I just need to make this commitment to myself. Like, I've got nothing to lose. And I know that life makes sense when I'm making music. And so at that point, I just was like, right, I've got to do this. And I did actually have a lot of support. I did a lot of therapy. Art school is basically therapy. You know, songwriting workshops such as these are pretty much also therapy as well for us artists. And I signed up with a creativity coach. So I've been working with a guy for 6 years weekly, one-on-one mentoring in creativity mindset, basically just changing my brain to believe that I can do what I do. And that's like having that kind of community of people around me, and those key support people has been integral to me being able to stay on track. Because, like, you know, every single week I will have so much doubt and imposter syndrome where I'm just like, am I an artist? Like, am I a musician? Can I even sing? I tried to sing in the shower this morning and it sounded terrible. Like, so it's a very long answer to your question.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I love the image of you writing songs with the dryers going at boarding school. So cute, so endearing.
I got dibbed as the like, all the girls found out that I was doing it, and they were like, oh, if we put our washing on, can you like put it through the dryer. So I would like be playing, and then as the dryer loads would finish and the washing machine loads would finish, I would like swap the girls washing out for them so that everyone had dry washing in the morning.
So cute. Yeah. And thank you as well for sharing the fact that you feel like every week there are some doubts that come through and you have to remind yourself or be reminded. So I'm curious, who else is on your team? So obviously there's your coach. I'm assuming
Yes.
Em, who you live with and work with very closely. Who else do you feel has been kind of your cheerleader along the way, or kind of what sustains you? What else sustains you to keep you on track in this very intense and unusual kind of a path?
Yeah. I would say, so I'm like I think one of the things I really discovered when I had my big burnout from releasing my own record was that it was really hard to motivate myself to do things on my own and to be everything for myself. And so I decided at that point that I wanted to learn more about co-writing and collaborating. And I spent a year collaborating and co-writing with as many of my friends and people in the industry that I could possibly convince to do songwriting sessions with me for. And through that process, I met a fellow who lives in Brisbane named Hans Van Vliet. And he has a band called 7-Bit Hero, which is a computer game and a band. And they write pop songs about computer games. And it's very nerdy. And I saw him perform at PAX, which is a computer game conference, which I don't even think I've ever played a video game other than Mario Kart in my life. But I somehow got a ticket to go to PAX through another friend. And Hans I did a session with him, and because he's an animator as well as a producer, music producer, we did a session and we just finished each other's sentences and completely understood. Like when I said to him, I just feel like that synth needs to be way sparklier, like, you know, like a really pale yellow. And he's like, totally. And he would just change the synth sound and it would be exactly how I imagined it. And so I started working with him in 2015. And he mainly works on visual stuff for me with my video clips, but we talk every single week. And really support each other. And he's been an incredible advocate for just empowering me to feel confident to make my own decisions and my own kind of, just be brave enough to know whether something's good. And so I would say he and his beautiful wife are like team Tash, and really support me. And definitely Emma, through working on Runaway Bells together, I've never met anyone really as driven as I am to succeed. And we started our band because we were both sick of playing solo music together. Sick of playing solo music independently. It was just so lonely on the road and so difficult to kind of have that energy. And so now, you know, the premise of Runaway Bells is always like, we're going to have fun. Doesn't matter how successful we are. It's like, if we're having fun, the band is on track. And that's actually led to like some really amazing success in the Tasmanian music industry and receiving, recently receiving like a $30,000 grant to record an album, which we found out while we were on the residency with you.
I saw that moment.
It was, I think I cried. I think I was like, oh my God, how did this just happen? And then Mio, and then my family have been really supportive. My dad, I think, has lived vicariously through me. He wanted to be a musician, and then he had 3 daughters and a farm. So he's always been obsessed with music and always 100% supported me to do my own thing. And even to the point when I was 17, he helped me buy a PA system, and we went into the shop and he was just like, you have to like be able to pick up every single item of this on your own and set it all up on your own. We're not buying you something that you can't physically manage. So he was really supportive in the early days, and I've like realized more and more just how lucky I am to have a family that supported me in that way. Yeah, I mean, there's so many more people in my life who have really supported me to do this. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's hard to name them all, but those are probably the core people that I would be talking to every week and really like kind of keep me going whenever I have moments of doubt or I'm a bit unsure about things. I'll just call one of those people and be like, I'm feeling like this.
Okay. So I'm getting from you that a team is important. That's what I'm hearing. And so
absolutely.
For the people listening to this interview, I guess, just to encourage that even once you've made an album and gotten a grant, you still need that regular support to just keep on the path.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as things even become more successful as well, like whatever your definition of success is, which is like a whole other conversation, but as you get busier and as you kind of get deeper into this practice of being an artist, you really need those people around you to be there. I actually I used to rely really heavily on my ex-partner when I was in my 20s. I was dating a guy who's like a really amazing songwriter, and his career like took off, and I really like looked up to him and valued his opinion on everything, to the point that when we separated, I was really uncertain about any of my ability to make any kind of decision, because I would always default to check with him on everything. Like, I think this band is good, do you? Like, and if you don't, I won't listen to them, kind of. But when we separated, I decided to put together what I called an Ears and Brains Trust. And it was a collection of people who I'd met in the industry, from songwriters to mentors to mixing mastering engineers, to publishing agents or other people who I wasn't working with in a professional capacity, but I knew them well enough to say, hey, I really want to have you guys so that if I'm making any kind of decision, like I can just check in with you and get your opinions. And they were all incredibly generous to basically stay on my list. And I eventually like stopped emailing all of them and just kind of found my core crew. But I could definitely recommend to people who are working, especially if you're working independently and you work from home and you don't have anyone to be accountable to, and you also don't have anyone to kind of mentor you, like to put together a list of all the people you know, and they might be in different industries as well. Maybe there might be someone who's just like really into marketing and they do marketing for some totally other product or service, but they're just really good at that. Like, just get them as a person that you can check in with and that you can workshop stuff with, and you can be that for your friends as well. As much as Hans is my support, I also we'll talk a lot about his projects and how he's kind of thinking about his next things for 7-Bit Hero. And even my coach, who I pay as a professional, like we will get into long conversations about his art practice and talk as peers around what we're trying to achieve with, say, Facebook ads or, songwriting strategies or things like that. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. The list is a beautiful idea to start there.
Yeah.
So you're starting to talk about things like Facebook ads, and I'm just taking a few little notes as you're talking. And I guess I'm curious to see whether you see your musical life as a business.
I do. My accountant doesn't. Okay. He sees it as a hobby.
Okay.
Because I don't actually make any money. I think actually Em is the real business brain in our Runaway Bells duo, and she's really, really staunch about not spending any money that we haven't made ourselves. So Runaway Bells is a closed unit now. In the early days, I invested a lot of money into recording because I just believed that it was really important for us to have good recordings. And so she very swiftly put a stop to that and said, we're getting grants to make our records. So definitely treat Runaway Bells like a business. Em and I have a partnership. We have an ABN. We invoice. We do our tax every year. And we do budgets. We have a monthly budgeting planning accounts meeting. We're not registered for GST yet. So that'll be a whole other thing when that happens. For Parker, I definitely, I've been working on a business plan for the last few years. I would say my business mind is the least developed component of my ability. So, intellectual. I'm just not naturally very good with making tough decisions. I'm much more inclined to be like, I need this piece of gear, so I'm just going to buy it, and then I'll just figure out how to pay for it in another way. But I feel like the next person I need for my team for that band is definitely a business manager, and they don't even have to be a music manager. They just need to rein me in. But I've always seen my music as a business because my mum actually sat me down. She's a real business savvy lady. So when I was 17, we did a 5-year plan, and we talked about like how many CDs I would need to sell, what I would need to be achieving at that time. And so I've regularly, I will regularly be strategizing about the business. And I do a tax return every single year with the business accruing losses. The great thing about being an artist is that you can accrue up to 5 years worth of losses to offset against any income that comes in. So, making music is just like an asset development outlay in the beginning. And then you end up putting that product out and hopefully selling some of it or playing shows or earning some kind of income, and then that can all be offset against your expenses. I would need to probably get a hit single to actually like cover all my expenses that I've spent over the last 5 years. But yeah, it's definitely good to look at it as a business because there's a lot of tax benefits. And I mean, in saying that though, I do feel like it's important to find that balance between, like, if it was a genuine business and I was doing it to get rich, I would make very different music to the music that I'm making. So it's a tricky thing to kind of separate that out. One of the things actually that I did the JB Seed management workshop thing. I don't know if they're still doing those with John Butler and Danielle, his wife, started this management course, and I did it in 2011. And John Watson, who is the head of 11 Music, which is Missy Higgins, Silverchair, and Gautier's manager. He came along to the workshop, and he said the tricky thing about the music industry is that it's a product first industry. So it's not like you're going out doing a whole bunch of market research and realizing where there's a gap in the market for you to develop a product to fit into that. You're hopefully just following your heart, creating what is the true essence of your expression as an artist. And then you got to try and figure out who that belongs, who's going to buy that, or who's really going to value that in the world. And and sometimes it's about timing and a lot of luck to actually, happen to make something that happens to connect with enough people to make enough money. So yeah, it's a tricky question going into the deeper
Mm.
like workings of, you know, the music business and
Mm.
why we do it.
Yeah. So then I guess it brings us back to passion. And I don't know about you, I'm assuming that you would do this even if there was a very small audience for it, because
Yeah.
it's your heart and soul. And so what is it that you love about performing, recording, creating? What is the passion for you? What do you experience in those spaces?
It's
Big
so
question.
interesting where you do it and you feel it, but you don't ever like stop to think about like what that actually is. Um, there's, I don't know, I feel really safe and at home
Mm.
when I create stuff. I feel like I have purpose and like I belong somehow. There's like
Mm.
it's so hard to describe that a sense of belonging, but it's so abstract because it's not to anything or for
Mm.
anything, but for some reason it just feels like um, the the core of what I am is really satisfied in that experience.
Mm.
One of the things I do with my coach is we do an exercise called the deeper purpose exercise, and we kind of I do it at the start of every 6 months. I go on a 1 hour walk and I say the words, my deeper purpose is, and then I like answer in my head. It's like, what is my deeper purpose? I'm like, I discovered recently it's just to sing.
Mm.
Um, and if I'm doing that, then that's enough.
Mm.
But like that exercise really gets you into that core of why, because if you know why, then you'll always be able to like rebut any kind of inner critic or fear.
Mm.
You know why you're supposed to be an artist.
Mm.
um, and and so like definitely that passion for me, just I often know that if I'm feeling a bit agitated or a bit grumpy or a bit depressed or just a bit like for no reason, if I make time to write a song, after I've written a song, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel way better now.
Mm.
And I will often find that I discover that if my life isn't going so well, like if I'm making bad decisions in other areas of my life or things are not going to plan in other areas of my life, often if I'll come back to being like, am I on track with my creative practice? What can I do to focus in on that? And often I'll find if things are off track in the rest of my life, things are also off track in my creative practice. And if I focus on getting my creative practice right, then
Mm.
everything else just starts to fall back into place again.
Mm.
So, and I mean, that's just the journey really for everyone. It's like we're all wandering around in the forest and occasionally we just wander off the path and then we've got to find our way back to it again.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. I love what you said. The home and the safety and the belonging. It's kind
Mm.
of such core needs that are being
Mm.
met for you in your music, and your creativity. When I was speaking before, I was talking about music being an intense and unusual path, and then I thought, why did I say that? Why is it unusual? It's not unusual. We've always had
Mm.
music. It's a natural part of being human. And yet
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
feels somehow in our culture like it's still a big deal to choose it as a primary um, vocation. So
Mm.
I'm curious about your thoughts on that, as to, why is it sometimes so hard to choose a thing that is so needed by so many people and so loved and such a meaningful part of life? Why do you think it
Mm.
is? Why do you think it is that it's still a big thing to make that choice?
I think it's interesting in Australia. I guess I can't speak for other cultures other than to know like you know, a few little random things that I've heard, like in Germany, there's this amazing government fund for
Right.
classical musicians and composers, and that through history in Europe, rich people would philanthropically basically support artists for their whole life, valuing the work that they do. And even in America, the culture around being an artist is way higher up on the kind of value scale. I think in Australia, we have this, and I think in particular like my parents' generation, so I was born in the 80s, and I do feel like, you know, people who are sort of born in the 80s and 90s, their parents were kind of brought up in this, like, there's university and you can like make something of your life and you should do something important, and for some reason they don't value the arts. So I think from a really young age, we're basically, if we want to be artists, we're constantly questioned on whether that's a valid thing to do, and then consequently as well, like, it's not valued in society. People don't want to pay for entertainment or pay for that experience. They just, like, they have this sort of entitled expectation that it's, you know, they can just experience it. So I think that there is a lot to overcome in how we've all been socialized as Australians. And yeah, I mean, I haven't necessarily like gone too deeply into this, but I mean, even for instance, this is like a hilarious moment that I had when I was studying fine arts. And when I used to say I'm studying fine arts, people would mistake it for finance, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's wonderful." I'd be like, "No, not finance, fine arts."
Yeah.
And I went to a art exhibition for an amazing painter from the Kimberley, and she had these huge landscape works for sale for, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 each. And my dad's accountant was down in Melbourne, and they came along to this exhibition where things were for sale. And I got chatting with them, and they're like, "How are you going? What are you up to?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm studying fine arts." And I said it very articulately. And Noel, the accountant, was like, "But how are you going to make money?" And they bought a painting at the exhibition. And I was just like, okay, so your belief around art not having any value is so strong that you can't even see literally what's in front of you, what's actually
You just
happening.
paid for it. Yeah.
You just paid for it. And so, you know, it's a really interesting kind of space. Though, I mean, I'm also the artist now who makes video art, which is not really, you know, it's not like a painting that you can sell. So, yeah, there's ways to do art and not get paid for it. I'm managing to choose all of those options, and there's ways to do art and get your accountant to buy to give you your money back. But yeah, I think that we have to, as artists, the way that we can affect positive change in terms of people valuing art is first by valuing yourself and finding a way to really genuinely value art in your life. Like, one of the exercises I did in my first ever workshop with my coach, we did like an intensive weekend workshop before I started my coaching, and one of the exercises he got us to do was imagine a world without any art or music or creativity. Like, imagine it. And I mean, can you? Like, every single thing we use, every single building we have, like everything we experience is, you know, from a creative, innovative, artistic mind. And I mean, at least we'd still have nature, which would be kind of nice, but it's so hard to imagine that world. And so finding the ways that art is super meaningful, I think, can really help us as artists be like, actually, I'm worth this much money. This is worth paying for because this is what it gives you, and really not listening to that socialized inner critic that's all the voices from our forefathers saying that art's not valuable or worthy or, a career worth pursuing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
A question about COVID, in terms of your vision for your musical life, and in what ways has COVID kind of shifting that, or has it, in terms of touring, traveling, and are you kind of imagining other ways of doing things as a musician now?
Oh, that's actually kind of a perfect segue into this other thought that I was just having about the value of art. And what I love about what's happened with COVID is just like not how the government has dealt with, valuing artists, but with the sheer like blatant kind of example of how much art and especially say filmmaking and storytelling, live streaming, live concerts, free concerts, people doing fundraisers and organizing concerts, like just how powerful music and art is in that space and just how valuable it is. Like I'm pretty sure Netflix, I mean, they're a big conglomerate and maybe it's not just them, but like any streaming company over COVID potentially saved lives from people going insane. Like I watched so much TV just to be able to escape the kind of terror that was when we didn't really know what was going to happen or what was what this was going to look like. And so I actually just got my first vaccination yesterday. My arm's really sore, but I'm feeling really pumped to be like on the train to getting the world back open again, mainly because I really want to play shows again. And so some of the things that COVID really kind of made me feel sad about was that I went to a Falls Festival over the New Year's just before the first shutdown happened, and I had committed to clean living, so not drinking and not taking any drugs, and I realized for the first time in my life just how powerful the energy of 11,000 people in a massive tight crowd counting down to New Year's, like just how powerful that energy was to make me feel like I was in a completely altered state. But I was 100% sober, and I was just so mesmerized by just how incredible that is, and I've always wanted to be on stage generating that for an audience. And when COVID happened, I just was like, are we ever going to be allowed to do that again? Like, are we ever going to be allowed to have that many people in such close quarters and that much kind of energy sort of happening? So that made me feel really sad. And I'd also just purchased this crazy amount of equipment and set up my whole live show with backing tracks and a band, and we did 2 shows, and then lockdown happened, and I was just like, I can't see myself being able to tour for the foreseeable future. But then I guess what came out of that was I was lucky enough to be living with M over lockdown, and being Runaway Bells and having all the gear and technology and an internet connection, we decided to start live streaming. And that was probably the biggest positive thing in our career, because we started live streaming, which meant we were brave enough to live stream ourselves on video. In the past we would never have dreamed of putting video recordings of ourselves online. We would just be like, it can't be perfect, let's not do it. And so like COVID kind of broke that barrier down for us, and we were
Mm,
able to watch our live streams back and develop our performance skills
mm,
exponentially, because we finally, you know, took our egos away and were really like, let's just get really good, and not be afraid to watch ourselves. And then I learned recently that that's what Dolly Parton used to do when she first started performing on TV. Like they'd
mm,
watch the show back and they would take notes and they would develop the show, and that's why she's amazing, like the
mm,
best. Um, and we also like built up a community over that time, and we got a lot of messages from people, because we would do it on a Monday night for a month, and so many people would tune in and just say, this is getting me through the weeks. We've got something to look forward to. We feel like we're part of something. We feel connected. And it's consequently meant that, you know, the feedback that we got from the grant funding panel was, we loved their live streams. We just really believe in these girls. They, you know, they're contributing so much to the community. We really want to fund them to keep doing what they're doing. So I think that COVID has been one of those things where it's like a lot of anxiety and a lot of difficulty and a lot of, you know, the arts industry has been hit really hard in a lot of ways. But, you know, your superpower as an artist is to be innovative in tricky situations. Like that's literally what we're trained to do. So I've been watching way too much Parks and Rec. I've been, I've been saying literally way too many times.
okay.
Yeah. Anyone who watches Parks and Rec will get that.
I don't watch it. Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that like that's one thing that you can be certain of as an artist, is that your ability to work with limitation, that's the definition of creativity.
Mm,
So it's nice to kind of find that balance in it.
mm.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you. Amazing answer. I think I have two more questions for you. One of
Great.
them is about songwriting itself. So, you know, you were saying if you're feeling down or anxious or anything, that you can just remind yourself, oh, you know, go and create something, go and write a song. What does that look like for you? What does go and write a song mean to you? How do you do it? Or what are some ways that you have experienced it?
I feel like in the early days for me, it was like laying an egg. It's like if you asked a chicken, like, how do you lay an egg and why do you do it and what's your process? The chicken would be like, I don't know. Like it just comes out. Like that's just what happens. Mm-hmm. But I have had writer's block in the past, and particularly after my first album and feeling really burnt out, I realized that I didn't have any other methods to writing. And so I started studying, like just, you know, teaching myself and also just working with lots of other musicians and learning about their process and forcing myself into situations where I had to write regularly, even if I wasn't feeling like doing it. Mm-hmm. So for me, there's definitely an element of the egg laying thing that still happens. Like, for instance, when we were at the residency, I wrote a song in the first week, the infrared one, and that really just kind of poured out of me as I was sort of just finding it. And I used a few different things, like I use an app called B Rhymes to help me with sort of searching for new words and new ways to kind of develop stories. And in particular, if I don't know what I'm writing about, like if I'm just writing in an intuitive way, sometimes it's good to have tools to just throw random words in the mix. And so, yeah, I feel like there's that process. Then there's also, for Runaway Bells, we've had a really strict process of getting a theme word or a particular thematic concept or a narrative that perhaps one of the other songwriters wants to tell, and then it's about finding a way to tell that story. So that's a away. And predominantly, I used to write just with an instrument like a guitar or a ukulele in my voice.
Mm-hmm.
I tend not to write words separately. I'm not really a poet, I would say. I tend to find that words will come when I hear cadences between chords, or I get a feeling about something. But I have also experimented with, and this is a particularly fun thing that I found for myself to get songs out that are just totally different to anything that I would ever write, is using Ableton Live as a producing software, and deciding before a session to be like, okay, I'm going to write a bass line and then I'm going to try and write a song over that, because, you know, that's a whole different way of thinking. Or you know, setting a tempo and putting a really rough drum loop in and being like, all right, I'm going to write a song at 200 BPM, because I would never do that. And forcing myself to experiment with those kinds of kind of playful approaches to writing. And I don't know what you guys are doing in your course. Like, are you writing a set number of songs in a time frame?
Yeah, it's a song a month for 9 months.
Right, cool. So in the past, I've been part of a couple of little independent groups writing a song a week, but only in 1 hour. And that was a really amazing technique I found, or just a really amazing framework within which you have to kick your inner critic out of the writing room, because an hour is just not long enough for you to critique anything. And it's I found it a really wonderful exercise to be able to just explore new things as well. So we would start with a theme word, and sometimes we'd get given an extra musical brief, like write a song in a minor key, or have a key change, or make sure you have a bridge, or, you know, they're like bonus points. The important thing is that if you sit down to write and something else comes out, don't stop it. Just do something for an hour every week, no matter what. And then voice memo, send it to the crew, and everyone gets feedback. And I would say that probably about 80% of the songs that are all my releases are 1 hour songwriting challenges.
Wow.
They started as 1 hour songwriting challenges. And obviously needed a lot more than an hour to finish. But just the joy of having no inner critic. And then the more you write as well, you can celebrate. If you write a shit song, you're like, phew, okay, great, got that one off my chest. Next one will be better. So yeah, I think that, I mean, in saying that, I really do struggle to maintain a consistent songwriting practice. I joined a 1 hour songwriting group recently, and I did the first 3 weeks, and then I got real busy and made a whole bunch of excuses, and now we're at week 9 and I haven't written anything for like 6 weeks. So it's like, I don't know, you just have to find ways to trick yourself into doing it as much as possible, and make it fun. Yes. Do you guys have that? Do you have like briefs each month for particular things, or?
There have been particular prompts and briefs, but it definitely varies. And in the group that you've just been talking to us about, sometimes the theme would just be one word, right?
Yeah, generally it's just a one word theme. So
an example would be?
So an example would be, I wrote a song called Superhuman, and the theme that week was cyborg. And generally, like, whoever's running the group will just like flip through a book or something and just be like, that word, or they'll have a particular word. There was an amazing week we did, actually. The word was subterranean, and everyone's songs that week were deep, like so deep.
It's the word sub. Really, it's like
subterranean.
Yeah.
And then there's been other weeks where it's like chicken wings. And it's like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to do that?
Yeah. Good challenge.
So good challenge, yeah. I mean, there's a platform called Songwriting that Francesca, who started that, she has like a paid app that you can basically sign up to. I think it's like $50 for a 10-week term, and you just get put into a group of strangers, and you get your theme word, and you get like a nice kind of like, you know, here's how to silence your inner critic kind of prompt each week. But I've found that I've done that a few times, which has been really good. But I also really love putting together a group of people that I really respect and admire as songwriters, and really kind of resonate and connect with, because I feel like the feedback and the accountability is a little bit higher, because you know, you want to impress your friends way more than you want to impress strangers. And so so there's like lots of different kind of ways that you can go about engineering the urgency into your practice to like be accountable to do stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like you know, even with chicken wings or subterranean or whatever the word is, some part of the soul or the mind or the heart just wants to collaborate and to be honest and to be expressive, whatever the prompt is, which is it's a gorgeous part of us that wants to come through, and we'll find a way to come through regardless. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful to see all the different people's interpretation or experience of that word prompt, because you just realize just how vast the vast creativity is.
Beautiful. So I just want to kind of hark back to a conversation that we had once with you and Em and I, and you were talking about how you make decisions to do a gig or not, and there were 3 things, if I remember correctly.
There were 3 things.
Could you share that with us?
Oh yeah, what was it again? It was like kicks, kudos, and cash. And this was taught to us by our singing teacher. Actually, I can't actually you know, claim intellectual property on that concept. Alison Bell, who's been doing our singing, and taught us this. And basically it's like, you know, you need to have at least 2 of those things to say yes to a gig. So either the cash needs to be good, you need to be being paid well, and it needs to have one of the others, which is like kudos is like, it'll be good on my resume. It's like a support for this person, which means that, you know, it'll land us something again in the future, or it's a, you know, a thing to support young independent female artists. For instance, we had a gig for International Women's Day, which was a headline gig, but we were only going to get paid $200 for it, and we normally charge about $1,000 for our shows. But it was to give a platform and bring a bigger audience to see some of these younger female artists play, and we also got some amazing kicks as well, which was we got this free curry, which was so delicious, from my favorite curry van. And you know, so there might be shows where say for instance there's a festival on King Island, just off the coast of Tasmania, and they don't have artist fees, but they fly you over there and they put you up in an amazing house and they give you all the fresh produce and meals. Someone lends you a car and you can get around the island, and it's an open green room, and it's, you know, they've got all these kind of perks, which mean, and it's just this really beautiful kind of exclusive experience. And so a lot of bands will agree to do that, even though they're getting paid like nothing for going there. So yeah, I think it's good to kind of factor those things in, because I think one of the things that Em and I decided very early on, because we'd already spent 10 years each playing really tough shows, we just decided that we just didn't need to play shows that didn't make us feel really good, because the energy that you can get from playing a great show, or presenting your music in a particular way that energizes you and makes you feel really wonderful and like you're achieving things and can propel you forward, and that energy is so valuable. Whereas if you do a show that is, you know, 4 sets at a noisy pub when no one is listening, you get to the end of that and you're exhausted, and you don't really feel valued. And or if you say do a gig where the sound system's really crap and you just have such a tough experience that you come away from it just being like, I don't even feel like an artist, I just feel like a loser. You just want to avoid those situations as much as possible, because there's already enough going on in your mind with inner critic and imposter syndrome and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we try and make sure that we value ourselves and we value anyone else who plays with us or works for us. We pay them a full rate because we want to promote value in the arts industry. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tash. And I guess there is that last little piece around also building an audience. So there are times definitely where I'll say yes to a gig where I'm not getting paid, because I want to connect with an audience and I need to grow an audience, and that has to happen. So sometimes if there'll be a listening crowd and the space feels good and there will be a listening audience, then I'll do something like that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Getting like a new true fan at a gig. Like, you only really need one per gig. You only really need to move one person like in that way where they come up to you after the show and they're just like, wow, that was incredible. I really felt something. And that is absolutely enough. And and I think that you're right. Like, we'll often do things where we're just like, all right, let's do this for the audience, like, and to connect. And also sometimes it's really good paid practice too. You know, we got offered a gig on the weekend because Melbourne's in lockdown, so there's a bunch of bands that haven't been able to come to play at Mona, and so we have been asked to fill in on the weekend, and we were like, oh, we weren't going to play any shows until September because we needed a break, but let's do this because our friend's booking and it's a favor for them, but also because we were just like, well, we've been working on our performance and we want to practice really like energized and focused performance, and so this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to just try that out in this space. And I think that you've just got to make sure that like the value, I guess, doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It just needs to be in line with with what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And if you have that person come up to you at the end and that is a true fan, would you suggest get their email and put them on a mailing list?
Totally. Yes, this is something that we're working on both of our projects. We've been really slack on mailing lists in the past, and I'm particularly hopeless with my own solo stuff. So I've actually got a friend helping me at the moment reset up my mailing list and subscription kind of service, and also running kind of advertising campaigns on Facebook to try and find people who are really into my music videos in particular, to kind of sign up. And then for Runaway Bells, whenever we play shows, we really encourage people to sign up to our mailing list and try and make it as easy as possible for them to do that as well. So I can't stress that enough, actually. If people are just starting out, that would definitely be something that I wish that I had been a little bit more diligent with right from the get-go, to just have a really good system around that and to put the time in after a show to really connect with people and help them sign up. Even like on our website, runawaybells.com, the first thing that comes up is like a spot to put your email. So whenever I'm standing with someone and they're like, oh, I want to know about your stuff, I'm like, well, give me your phone. Just like put the thing, I was like, type your email in here. It's done. That's like definitely, I don't know, have you read the 1,000 True Fans essay?
No.
There's an essay that someone wrote, and I can't remember. Oh, I think I'll email it through to you. I think I've got it somewhere, and I read it recently, and they basically were saying you really only need 1,000 true fans who will spend up to $100 on you every year for you to earn $100,000 and basically be able to fund your career. And when you think about that, like, it's not a massive amount of people, but they do have to be like guaranteed true fans. So it's a pretty big ask still, and it might take 5 to 10 years to really develop that followership, and that connection. But in the meantime, even if you've only got 7 people who, or 10, like 10's a way easier number to do something. Like, there's $1,000 in a year that you would not have been able to earn. I mean, this is more selling merchandise or selling CDs or selling something, one-off things.
Live streams, gigs, yeah.
Live streams, gigs, yeah, whatever. Like people who are gonna, or if you run a Possible campaign, that they're gonna be the ones who will donate $100 to you for a project, or pre-purchase an album if you want to do pressings or whatever.
Yeah.
So really nurturing those people in the early days and building that up. Like that's kind of what I'm focusing on now for my own practice. In the past, I've been like, throw heaps of money at publicity and working with a publicist and all this marketing, but it's not led to any genuine fans. It's not led to any album sales, so I think that money could be much better spent really tapping into finding those people who just love what you do and you make their life a better experience. And they're also going to really love whatever you do. They're not going to be like a record label saying, oh no, you can't use that guitar sound because you need to have this weird crazy frog sample in here for us to sell records.
They always say that.
Yeah, they always say that. That was some kind of weird tropical synth, like a reggaeton beat. I don't know. Anyway.
Tash, it's been a true pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much. I feel personally inspired by this conversation. Thank you for your generosity, your openness, and I really hope that it's going to land for the listeners of this interview, and a thousand true blessings for your creative path.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I feel energized from this chat too. I'm going to go and do my vocal practice now.
Perfect. Thanks, Tash.